Hey, baseball fans, how's it going? Hayden here. And in today's video, I'll be joined with a very special guest.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name's Elias. I run a channel called Big Apple Baseball Banter, Mets Yankees podcast, primarily Mets Town, let's go. But we do a weekly podcast live stream, and we make Mets and Yankees content, and all MLB content. So, Hayden, man, I want to thank you for having me on your show, and let's get down to business. Talk some shitty Brodie Van Wagenen moves.
Anytime. And if you guys want to see the best Brodie Van Wagenen moves, it will be on his channel. And on mine, we will be having the worst. So I think first we start up, we have the Jarred Kelenic trade from the Seattle Mariners. In return, getting Diaz and Robinson Cano. And I think this was personally one of the most foolish and defensible trades that will remain no matter how Kelenic performs with the Mariners, as well as the value for Diaz. We see 2 years later how this turned out. Cano, he got canceled. 2019, he wasn't that great. 2020, he proved himself, but he was juiced. He was cheating. Cano, like I said, he got canceled. So that made the trade much more foolish. And then Edwin Diaz. And I mean, Edwin Diaz, he was one of the best closers in the game in 2018. And then unfortunately with the Mets, I don't know, he didn't really like that very much. He lost so many saves, home runs. Do we need to mention the Nationals and Kurt Suzuki? Oh boy, I don't even want to mention that. But, Diaz, I think when it comes to this trade, I don't know. You look at Diaz, 2019 was terrible. 2020 started to avenge himself, but that was 60 games. Can you judge himself? He could
with
pivot
no
back.
Fans too. That's the big question with him is like, you think it's like a mental thing. How is he going to deal with rowdy New York Mets fans? I'm a little nervous about that.
Of course, and I think dealing Kelenic was clearly a bad move, and it has gotten worse since him being the fourth prospect in the baseball MLB rankings.
Crazy, man.
Honestly, MLB ready by this year or next year, and I think he's an outfielder. And I know there were so many talks about Nimmo and not wanting him as the center fielder. And think about it. And also, if we didn't go with this trade, we could have even acquired Brad Hand because the whole closer rule. But
or
what are your
Hendricks?
thoughts?
Yeah. So the move was Robinson Cano, Edwin Diaz, and cash to help pay off Cano's contract. Because that's the worst thing about Cano is that we didn't need him. We had Jeff McNeil. He could be our second baseman. You had Todd Frazier at the time at third base. Or if you need a third base, just go get a damn third baseman. With Brodie, that year, the whole team was out of position. You had Pete Alonso, below average first baseman, Wilson Ramos, the worst defensive catcher I've ever seen in my lifetime. You had Robinson Cano, who's like should live in a retirement home, so he can't really move much anymore. Ahmed Rosario had like 10 outs, negative 10 outs above average. He was horrific at shortstop for the first half of that season. Todd Frazier, average. And then you had Dom Smith or J.D. Davis in left field, who were just clueless out there because they're infielders. They shouldn't be playing left field. Nimmo was hurt, which he's also awful in center field. So you had Michael Conforto playing center, bad out there. And then Nimmo was decent in right, but he's a second baseman. Why is he out there playing right field? It's poor roster construction. But seeing Kelenic as the number 4 ranked prospect's ridiculous. And even if he doesn't work out, you could think about this. If you traded him now, you could literally trade him for who's like a star player in baseball. You could get like him for Luis Castillo and more from the Reds, and you wouldn't even. He would be untouchable if he was on the Mets, and he's untouchable on the Mariners, and he's a center fielder too. That's literally the biggest need for this team. So he could come up next year, be our center fielder. He's a 5-tool player, a player that we very much need, and you traded him for Cano, whose contract is impossible to move now. And what do you even do with Cano after this year? Because 2020, he was good on steroids. So this year he's suspended. So we get an extra $25 million, but you got to have, he's back on the books next year, and you're not going to obviously play him over McNeil or all these young guys. You got Lindor. So I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to force him to restructure. They should do what they did with Cespedes, file like a grievance and force him to restructure and then cut him. And
of course,
Diaz, I'm so worried about with fans. I think he's going to be good. And then also we gave up pitching prospect Gerson Batista. I'm not really familiar with him. And then we gave up Justin Dunn, who's a good middle of the rotation pitcher. We could have gotten something out of him. I'd rather see Justin Dunn than giving up 2 prospects for Marcus Stroman. I like Stroman, but you don't have to give up extra prospects. And we were able to dump Jay Bruce and Anthony Swarzak's contracts too. But the fact that you just gave up Kelnick and maybe even Dunn too, and to take on that monster Cano contract when you didn't even need a second baseman, you had a good second baseman already. It was just a ridiculous move. It's just him getting he finally Brodie was his first time in the front office. He's like, "Ooh, I got all the power. Let's make something big happen here." So it was
No,
just irresponsible of him.
no, of course. And I think it's, you look with the Mets and you look at so many other teams, the farm system is so important. You look at a team like the Nationals, the Cubs, the Brewers, they don't have such a great farm team. So they're trying to do their rebuilding process with what? If you look at a team like the Padres, look what they were able to do this offseason with their
Crazy, man.
prospects. Look at the Rays. The Rays, the Padres, the Dodgers have a pretty solid farm system. The Marlins. These teams are going to be solid in 3, 4, 5 years when all these guys are up in the major leagues. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure some of them won't be able to produce.
Yeah, Seattle. Look at Seattle. Their future is amazing now.
Of course, and especially now that the Astros are getting less, the A's are getting less, the Rangers are doing whatever. Who knows?
The Rangers, yeah.
The Angels, I think, would be really the only contender. But I think the farm
hope, man. I want to see Mike
so,
Trout make the playoffs. I feel so bad for that guy.
He has one home run in the playoffs, 2014 against the Royals. But so I guess we'll have to see. But that is our first one. Next up, we have the signing of Jed Lowry, and when this happened, so many Mets fans were so excited, and I'm thinking to myself, how old is this guy? He's like 34, 35. The signing of Jed Lowry did not make much sense. It occurred in 2019 when the Mets, we already were stocked up on infielders. Lowry was coming off a very good back-to-back season with the Mets. My apologies, with Athletics.
Oakland, yeah.
And it definitely proved to be one. But Lowry, he had so many injuries. We saw him at spring training with that knee brace on, and I'm thinking, why is he on the field?
He couldn't comment on it either. It's like, what's with the brace that covers half your leg? Oh, no big deal. And I remember he was on a rehab assignment with the Syracuse Mets, and they came to I live in Rochester, and we have the Rochester Red Wings, so they're in the same AAA division. I remember they popped his stats on screen, and he was hitting like 150 in AAA. I'm like, what the hell happened? This guy should be hitting like 400. He's playing with a bunch of AAA guys. But
of course.
The signing didn't make much sense. So at the time, the infield was Cano at second, McNeil at third / Frazier, I guess, Rosario, and then either Pete Alonso at first. Now, you could sell me on if Pete Alonso wasn't the guy, you'd play Cano at first base and then Lowry at second, or Lowry at third, McNeil at second, something like that. But yeah, the signing, I liked it, but it didn't make too much sense. And immediately he had that one left knee capsule sprain and then just disappeared.
And I mean, you look at how many he played 0 games in 2020, and in 2019, I think he played
at bats,
in what,
he
9
was 0
games.
For 8. Didn't start one game.
Exactly. I think he
didn't play in the field. He had 8 pinch hit at bats and didn't get a hit.
Yeah, signing him, he had so many problems with his PCL and his knee and just his whole body in general. He was crippled, sadly. He just was very older. He was a veteran. That was definitely a Will Ponce type of move, signing a veteran who's injured. He was a
client on the field. Like Brodie wanted to do his old client a favor, I guess, and he was like, "Hey, here's his agent." Yeah, it was a 2-year, $20 million contract, $10 million a year, which isn't awful, but like there was talks this past year, like, oh, we got to get with before Steve Cohen, the last offseason, like, oh, we gotta trade Jed Lowry, let's package Dom Smith and dump his contract. I'm like, if they did that, my God, because he would have just gone off in wherever he went. And it's such a bad move. And, I don't think even Brodie thought it was going to end this well, but even looking, you got to blame someone for having this, they know more than we do about whether you're going to get injured or not. And it wasn't even that great of a fit in the first place. So yeah, Jed Lowry, stupid move. Dead Lowry, as some Mets fans call him, because it seemed like he's just gone. Some people, Mets maniac said he got abducted by aliens or something.
Yeah, there was how they have like those back in the day, like Western, like Wanted. Have you seen Reward 25,000? Someone made
Jed Lowry.
Have you seen this man? There's a picture of Jed Lowry, and I think the last we heard of him, he was like going down to Texas or something, and who knows what he was doing. But honestly, Lowry was just not.
Didn't
I
do
don't.
anything. The media asked Luis Rojas last season. Do you know what the update is with Jed Lowry? He said, "Oh, I don't even know where he is right now."
So next up on this list, we got Familia. Why don't you go at it?
Well, we're really like feeling those consequences of giving like he was a decent reliever at the time. We traded him to Oakland and we got, not much back for him, but it was just a rental contract. And then he re-signed with us, which back then I liked the move. Now, 10 million a year is a lot for someone his caliber. For most relievers in general, they don't make that much money unless you're truly like a Liam Hendricks or a Josh Hader. You're truly like a dominant reliever. So he was brought in to be the setup man in 2019 for Diaz, and they were both terrible. Familia's control was just a joke. Like he was just pitch, ball, pitch, ball, pitch, strike, pitch, ball, walk. Next, it was just blowing games. He was so bad, had no command. And this year a little bit better, but not great. And now like we're trying to move his contract, and you really can't. Um,
And that's the thing. I think we look at him and how we saw him progress once he came up. We saw him, with the Mets in their October 2015 postseason run. And, he honestly, he gave up, I think it was, what was it, game 2, I believe, of the World Series when he gave up the save.
Yeah, I think it was to Alex Gordon or something.
Yeah, it was either game 1 or game 2. And then I think game 3 or 4, he was able to avenge
The bullpen
himself.
blew like
But
every game, but back in that World
yeah, and
Series, let's not
Familia,
talk about that.
I don't know. Would you want to say Dylan Betances as an upgrade from him? They're very similar. I don't know, but Familia just didn't. Why just sign him? Why just sign him back?
Well,
He,
if you
we
want to
saw.
sign him back, that's cool, but don't sign him for 3 years and don't give him $10 million a year. Like
I,
relievers don't get that much, and they don't get those years for a reason because they're so
I
hot and
mean,
cold.
like looking on Baseball Reference. I mean, 2020. He has 0.5 WAR, 2 wins, 0 losses, 3.71 ERA. He had 0 saves, 26.2 innings pitched, 23 strikeouts, and a 1.4 WHIP. A little bit higher than the last couple of years.
That's what you get with him.
He's a free agent in 2022. If you want to throw him in a package, honestly, I thought that he would have been thrown in a package with the Blue Jays and Steven Matz. I thought Matz and Familia would have been like a solid package to a team,
Probably have
but
to give up a prospect for them to take that contract though. Like, because both guys are getting overpaid. Like Steven Matz is not worth $5 million because he's terrible. But but yeah, this was just a bad signing, and like I don't think we expected it to be this bad. But like as a GM, you can't make that excuse. Like, oh well, he didn't know he was going to be this bad. I'm like, you got to do your due diligence better than that. So it was just a bad move. It's not as bad as the other two. Like the Cano trades, like might set us back, a couple years with not much, payroll flexibility, but this also doesn't give us much payroll flexibility when you're paying a guy $10 million just to be a below average reliever.
he signed a 3-year contract, correct?
3 year, 30 million, 10 million AAV. And the thing was, like, you didn't have to pay him that much. He wanted to come back to New York because I'm pretty sure the Mets like helped pay, like I think his mom had some illness and they helped like pay the medical bills and stuff like that. So he clearly wanted to be back in New York. So like he'll take a discount. You don't have to pay him like overpay for him like another team is gonna sign him. And if another
True.
team sign him, then great because he's not on this team.
No, of course. And I think in the moment at the time, and we were talking about Edwin Diaz, that's when we acquired. I believe it was that December of 2018, January of 2019, when we got Diaz. And then we also re-signed Familia, and people thought that would have been a solid lock. But, going ahead with Familia, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, could Dylan Betances start to take over his spot as more of a setup man? I don't think he'll be closing games. As we mentioned his control. He'll throw 2 balls and then 2 strikes. I think we saw that this past year. I believe it was against the Marlins when we were up, and it was DeGrom. He couldn't get the win, and it was when Conforto, I think it was that game, and then Conforto hit the 2-run homer in the top of the 9th
Yeah,
to make
I
the
was so hyped with that home run. I was screaming. That was a good
no.
time, but
That was
that's what the Mets
that
bullpen does to you. They just blow every game when your freaking ace is
yeah.
on the mound.
Familia just he wasn't worth resigning personally, if you ask me. So next up on today's list, we have the Marcus Stroman trade. And, a lot of Mets fans were very hyped when we first heard about this trade. Everyone's like, oh my God, Cy Young pitcher. We saw Marcus Stroman with the Blue Jays. We saw his postseason run with the Blue Jays, in 2015, 2016. Stroman, he's a solid down the line pitcher in that rotation, in the second or third spot. We saw his crazy debut at Citi Field against the Nationals. He had how many strikeouts did he have? Like 12, 13, something like that. Those innings, that honestly was a great game for Stroman, but I think, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, any Mets fan calling him a Cy Young pitcher, they probably bumped their heads that morning because he's not that pitcher. But, he had a great game. That was obviously a great game with the Conforto walk off. But I was actually in Canada at the time, so all the Blue Jays fans were sad about him. I was hyped, but back then, when you look back, you think, well, why are we? The team was absolutely terrible at that time. We were like 11 games under 500 or something. So why go for it that year? And I like Stroman. But, and Brodie didn't know that there was going to be a, pandemic happening and he was going to opt out.
Of course.
But, giving up, Simeon Woods Richardson looks like he's going to be a really good pitcher. Anthony Kay could have been our fifth starter or a long reliever in the bullpen. Like we could have used that. Or you could probably trade him, get some more value. Then, Stroman, I'm glad that we traded for a guy, not just a rental, like he had another year after, but I think the more the credit goes to Sandy Alderson for re-signing him. So you're probably saying, well, he's on the team this year. Well, that's not really on Brodie. That's on Sandy Alderson. But I think you could have done better. And it was kind of wrong place, wrong time, just because the Mets, they were so bad at that time. And I'm glad they got good. I'm not like that type of person like, oh, well, if you don't make the playoffs and you're like, you barely make it, that's bad because you miss on a better draft pick or whatever. Which is with baseball, it doesn't matter because the draft is like a shit show. But but it was just a weird move, man. And I think the credit should be given to Alderson for re-signing him, but I think you could have done better. Maybe instead of trading for Stroman, you could have re-signed Zach Wheeler. I think Zach Wheeler is better than Marcus Stroman. And Marcus Stroman had some inconsistencies in his past. Toronto Blue Jays fans love the guy. He's a super high energy guy. I think a lot of times if you had to re-sign him, you kind of have to pay for the brand too. Like I'm all about athletes using social media and stuff, but like Marcus Stroman's not only he's like a freaking rapper or something. He's on like a rap song, which
I see a lot on Instagram. He posts a lot of pictures on Instagram of, I know he's very into nature.
He has a clothing brand too. Height Doesn't Measure Heart. And then he has a feature on this really shitty rap song. Well, it's actually not that. It's not a terrible song, but it's like this. He had like a feature on a rap song. He went on tour with his buddy who was a former teammate of his in college who became a rapper, which is pretty weird. But you're kind of paying for the brand with him too. So I don't know how they would have gone about re-signing him because he was going to command a lot of money anyways. But it just seemed like the wrong place, wrong time, just because how out of it the Mets were. And I'm glad to see them. I'm glad to see them, playing well, but it wasn't really the starting pitching that was the issue. It was the bullpen that was the issue.
Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think this was a much better upgrade? I mean, of course, you're going to say it's a better upgrade from Jason Vargas, but do you think this helped the Mets more?
Oh, definitely. Jason Vargas is fucking terrible, but no, the thing was the bullpen was the issue. And if you wanted to upgrade from Jason Vargas, Dallas Keuchel was right there on the market. You could have signed him, and he's a better pitcher than Marcus Stroman and Jason Vargas. You could have signed him, and then if you wanted to trade guys, you trade for a reliever or multiple relievers. The starting pitching wasn't the biggest issue then. You had DeGrom was obviously phenomenal. Syndergaard was kind of having a down year, but he still gave you innings. Zach Wheeler kind of was Zach Wheeler, pretty inconsistent, but good at times, not very good at other times. And you had Matz, who in the second half of that season was really good, which is kind of weird to think about Matz being good. But
right, I think it was. I mean, you could say a pro about signing Stroman was that he helped increase that morale and just that
That's
stretch
very true.
in
Yeah.
the second half. And I know getting into his mechanics, I know because he hasn't played any games in 2020 due to, he was injured and then he opted out. But we saw during spring training how something changed with his mechanic and his windup, how he didn't like curve like a Cueto, but he kind of like and then lifted his leg up and kind of hold it in the air, or held it, I should say, my apologies, in the air for about like 2-3 seconds. Kind of.
Oh, he's always done that. He does timing games basically, where he just tries to mess up the hitter's timing.
But the
He's
thing was,
he's known
he
for
held his
that.
leg up. He held, like, if you like see the spring training clips compared to 2019, he holds his leg up longer.
I think I know what you're I think he's always done that though, like to mess up the hitter's timing. You might be right. Yeah, I bet I'm not the most knowledgeable about pitching mechanics and stuff, but he's always been known for doing timing games, trying to mess up hitters' timings. Maybe whether it's quick pitching or raising your leg up, something like that. But
Right. But I mean, I think this particular part with Stroman being one of the worst signings, this is what you could be on the fence with. I think the only reason people are super, could neglect this idea is that we got rid of two prospects, Anthony Kay and Simeon Richards, and then, he opted out. So as of right now, it's not looking good, but who knows, maybe down the line, this could turns out to be a good one. But I think as of right now, it's just one of those things that we have to go against.
yeah, I just think in mid-season acquisitions, you got to think of where you are then, and there was other ways, to improve your starting rotation, which wasn't the issue, like I said, than trading for a guy, which I like Stroman too. Now seeing him back in a Mets uniform is cool. Maybe extend him after this year, but not an awful move. It's not like anywhere near as Diaz Cano moves, but going down the list, they aren't as bad, but they're still not great moves.
So next up on our list, we have Neon Broxton, and
it's not just Keon Broxton. It's basically three players that do the same thing. So it's Keon Broxton, Jake Marisnick, and Billy Hamilton. So basically trading prospects for the easiest position. So the easiest players to find, which are just guys who can't hit anything, and they're just good fielders, and you give up prospects for them, for two of them to like DFA them 2 months later after you acquire them. Marisnick was different because he actually hit well. He in very limited playing time, but he only hit against right-hand pitching, which he's always, or left-hand pitching, which he's always been pretty good against. But the thing with him too is that you gave up Blake Taylor, who became a really good reliever for the Astros that we definitely could have used last year. And then Broxton. So I wrote this down. Keon Broxton, obviously center fielder. He was kind of, and you already had Juan Lagares on the roster too, which Brodie Van Wagenen said this is supposed to be depth. Well, if you want depth, just sign some dude off the street and to be your fifth outfielder. You already had your fourth outfielder. Juan Lagares was making a pretty penny for, the quality of player he was. But Keon Broxton, he was traded for Adam Hill, Bobby Wall, and Felix Valerio. And then Adam Hill was later traded to the Mariners for Omar Narvaez, which is like the fact that you get a starting catcher for freaking Keon Broxton is like, obviously. And then he was acquired on January 5th and was DFA'd May 7th, which the season starts, I think, March 25th. So he barely even made it into the year because he was complaining about not getting playing time and shit like that. And he obviously made that terrible error in left field. I don't know if you remember. He lost the ball in the sun and then just did this.
I don't think it was the sun. I thought it was the
Or
stadium.
the lights. Yeah, it was a night game. He lost in the lights.
I remember that. But I think, Broxton, I don't know. I think he was given the chance, and I don't want to say this, but I think he was more given the chance to show that he could be an outfielder until Cespedes comes back. And, both of those, we saw how that played out. But Broxton he had such limited bats, what did he bat? I don't remember what he batted off the top of my head, but
season. So I saw a video of when the Brewers re-signed him after. So the Brewers traded him to the Mets. He went to the Orioles, then to the Mariners, and then he re-signed with the Brewers. So the Brewers basically got three prospects for free, and he had a 300 OPS. So I don't know what he hit, but definitely really bad if you have like a 300 OPS.
Right. I think he just ran out of time. And Broxton, I mean, is he really that great of a player to have on the Mets? I think as a backup, I know, as you said, Marisnick. But the thing is, Marisnick hits. he didn't really hit. I think he had like one hit with the Mets.
Yeah, and it was like I think it was he had one start with the Mets, I
It was like a
think, where
little
he actually got
blooper.
a against the Marlins, I'm pretty sure if I remember. And then also Billy Hamilton, the move made no sense because you had Marisnik and then you had a guy named Ryan Cordell who was a great fielder, speedy player, and you signed him to a minor league contract, and then you had to DFA him so you could acquire Billy Hamilton, who does the same thing as Ryan Cordell. Maybe, maybe he's a little faster, but he almost lost us a game because he was such an aggressive base runner, and luckily JD hit that homer off of Aroldis Chapman, but
Of
you
course,
treated Jordan Humphreys, who was a decent prospect at the time, and the Giants ended up getting rid of him, so it doesn't really make sense. But the fact that you're trading anything that besides maybe cash for a player who's got signed on August 2nd or got traded for on August 2nd and on September 4th got DFA'd is just stupid. And you already had a player like that in Jake Marisnik. I get if he was hurt, but these players you sign, you don't trade for these defensive outfielders who can't hit.
so next up on our list, we have acquiring re-signing Todd Frazier and then signing Robinson Chirinos. This made very little sense to me. I think it was the trade deadline. I honestly was very questioning on who they would get. I wasn't really Chirinos, I was like, okay, solid enough. He could, maybe we could have him because, Wilson Ramos, he was a fat
He's
buffalo. He couldn't
Wilson
even run
Ramos.
in 10 seconds. He gave up so many losses,
He
with
missed that tag against Philly.
Harper, that one, he got the ball, but he was too lazy to run over and tag him. I think the only reason we got him was just for the season because, Tomas Nino, he did come down with COVID. So we didn't really have anyone. They brought up Ali Sanchez for a couple games who, he did all right, I guess. But, now we have
terrible.
James.
He was so bad. I remember he gave up that he gave up that stolen home base to John Birdie. But that's the thing with Chirinos, though, is like you already have the same kind of player. And also, Robinson Chirinos was hitting like 150 that season with Texas. So you already have, you can give Ali Sanchez, see if he can do anything because he's a young player versus Robinson Chirinos, who's like 36 years old. And you could have given up, nothing and got rolled with Ali Sanchez as your backup catcher. And then with Todd Frazier, it made no sense because if you wanted him, you could have just re-signed him in the offseason. You didn't have to trade anything. I know they just traded up a player to be named later. That's my same thing with Billy Hamilton. If you wanted him so badly, you could have just signed him in the offseason to like a minor league contract like the Giants did. So I just don't get trading anything. And I don't, even if these prospects don't become anything, it was a useless signing. You already had plenty of infield depth. I like Todd Frazier just because he's a nice guy and he's good in the clubhouse, I guess. Good veteran presence. But they were
Right.
giving him decent playing time over JD Davis, which was ridiculous. And it was just it made no sense. If you wanted to acquire someone, go get a starting pitcher, go get a bullpen arm. You didn't need any extra bats who are just bad.
Right. I would say definitely the Padres won that trade deadline with acquiring Clevenger. But
yeah.
when you look at the Mets re-signing him, of course, as you stated, well, then you should have re-signed him in the offseason. I mean, listen, he went to the Rangers for a bit. He didn't really do too well there. We saw in 2019, he had his ups and downs. There was one time when he was batting like 224, and I'm sitting there screaming at my TV, bench this guy, get him off the field. He's not a third baseman. Defensively, he's all right, I guess. Offensively, swinging like all over the plate. He's very skinny, I will say that. He's very, little.
He did have one of the best moments in recent Mets history, in my opinion, that home run against
right when
which
down.
is great. Yeah, which that was amazing, obviously. Great Gary call on that one too. But it just trying to trade for these guys back. And even if you wanted to resign him in the offseason, you could probably just sign him on like a minor league contract. But also don't resign him and don't trade for him. You don't need him.
Of course. I would like to thank you all very much for watching. What else would you have to like to say?
Yeah, guys. I'd appreciate you guys come check us out on Big Apple Baseball Banner. You can follow us on Instagram, big.apple.baseball.banner. We live stream every Wednesday, so we love getting involved with the 9 o'clock Eastern. We love getting involved with the viewers. So we have comments that we can put up on the screen. There's a call-in. So there's a link that we do to go our live stream. Hayden usually is on the live stream there, so I want to thank him for doing that. So yeah, we're gonna do some content together. Two young Mets fans on YouTube, just trying to, get more kids our age into baseball. That's the hope. So yeah.
No, of course. And I guess to sum up this video, first up, we had Diaz and Cano coming to the Mets and losing Jared Kalanick. Second, the signing of Jed Lowry. Third, we had the re-signing of Familia. Fourth, we had the Marcus Stroman trade. Fifth, we had the Keon Broxton acquiring. And then sixth, we had the re-signing of Todd Frazier and the signing of Robinson Chirinos. But I would like to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. See ya.